My name is Margaret, though most folks just call me Maggie. I'm 78 years old now, living alone in a little house tucked between cornfields in Delaware. My voice shakes sometimes, my hands too, but tonight I want to tell you a story I've held inside for too long. It's not easy. It's not pretty. But maybe, just maybe, it'll help someone out there. I was 62 when it all happened. Back then, I still had more spring in my step, though I'd already buried my husband and most of my siblings. The house was too big for me, and the fields outside had grown wild. The loneliness, though, that was what grew fastest. It crept in like ivy through the cracks, wrapping itself around my bones. I don't know if you've ever been that lonely. The kind where the silence presses on your chest at night, where you sit at the kitchen table and set down 2 plates out of habit, only to slide one back into the cupboard with a sigh. So if you're watching, my friend, go ahead and like this video, comment where in the world you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's story. 'Cause this ain't just my story, it's the story of too many women who had to smile through the silence. That summer, the weeds swallowed my garden, and the roof leaked every time the sky turned mean. I couldn't keep up. So, I hired help. A boy, really. 21 years old, though he carried himself with the swagger of a man twice his age. His name was Daniel. I found him through a neighbor's nephew, said he'd work cheap, said he needed the money. The first day he came, I remember how the sun caught in his hair. Blonde, unruly, and his smile could have sold snake oil to a preacher. He called me ma'am at first, but there was something in the way his eyes lingered, like he saw more than the old woman with spotted hands. Like he knew my hunger for companionship before I even admitted it to myself. "Don't worry, Mrs. H," he said, lugging a sack of mulch across the yard like it weighed nothing. "I'll take good care of you." And Lord help me, I believed him. For a little while, life felt brighter. He mowed the grass, fixed the hinges, even carried groceries inside for me. He filled the silence with chatter about college, dreams, girls, and all the wild things I never got to do at his age. He teased me sometimes, called me Miss Maggie instead of ma'am, and I'd swatted him with a dish towel, laughing like a fool. But laughter is a dangerous drug when you're lonely. The shift was subtle. He began staying later than he needed to. Borrowing little things, first a book, then $20 for gas. "I'll pay you back, I promise." He never did. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself it felt good to be needed again. Then came the day I noticed my mother's locket missing from the dresser. A small thing, silver and worn, holding the only photograph of her left in the world. I searched high and low, tore the room apart, but it was gone. When I asked him about it, he laughed, said maybe I misplaced it. Something cracked in me that day. Still, I let him come back. Isn't that pitiful? I let him walk through my door with muddy boots and honeyed lies. Because I couldn't stand the silence, not again. If you're watching this, you might shake your head at me, but unless you've lived through the ache of being unseen for decades, you don't know what you'd trade just to hear footsteps in the hall. One evening, late in August, I heard voices outside my window. Daniel and another boy, whispering, laughing. They didn't know I was near. I heard him call me the old crow with the checkbook. I heard him say I'd give him anything if he smiled sweet enough. And his friend laughed so hard I thought they'd choke on it. That was my breaking point. I shut the window quietly, sat down on the bed, and let the tears come. I hadn't cried like that since my husband died. The kind of sobbing that shakes your ribs, makes you gasp for breath. Because it wasn't just about the locket, or the money, or the lies. It was about dignity. About realizing I'd handed my trust to someone who saw me as nothing more than a silly old woman to be bled dry. And here's the thing I need you to hear: age doesn't protect you from heartbreak. You can be 70, 80, 90, and still, your heart can be broken like a teenage girl's on prom night. That night, I promised myself something. No more being played for a fool. No more letting loneliness blind me. But promises are easier made than kept. Because Daniel wasn't done with me yet. He came back the next morning, all smiles, holding a bouquet of wildflowers he'd snatched from the roadside. "For you, Miss Maggie," he said, like he could erase what I'd heard. His voice was syrup, sticky and sweet, and for a moment I almost melted back into believing him. Almost. I want to pause here and say, if you're still listening, bless you. It means more than you know. Please, give this video a like so I can keep telling my story. I've got 3 more parts to share, and trust me, it gets worse before it gets better. Because what Daniel did next, well, it left scars I still carry. And what I did after, that's the part no one in town ever forgave me for. When I sat down to film this, I promised myself I wouldn't sugarcoat a thing. So here goes. Daniel didn't stop after the locket. In fact, the missing locket was just the beginning of his taking. He came around every day that summer, grinning like a boy who thought the world owed him, and I let him in. I let him sit at my table, drink my coffee, and eat from my fridge. He'd brag about his nights out with girls, about poker games with his buddies, about how he was going to make it big someday. And me? I just listened. Because even lies can sound like music when you're starved for a voice besides your own. But little by little, I noticed things disappearing. A pair of candlesticks that had belonged to my grandmother. My late husband's watch, which I'd kept on the nightstand since the day he passed. Even the money jar I kept tucked in the pantry for emergencies, emptied one morning without so much as a note. I asked him about the watch once. He leaned against the counter, chewing gum like he owned the place. "Relax, Miss Maggie," he said with that smirk that used to charm me. "I just borrowed it. I'll bring it back." But he never did. I don't know why I let it slide. Pride, maybe. Or shame. If I admitted what he was doing, it meant I had been stupid enough to let him. And who wants to admit that at 62, after a whole lifetime of working and raising kids and holding your head high? Still, it gnawed at me. Nights grew heavier. I'd lie in bed listening for the creak of floorboards, wondering if Daniel would slip in like a thief. I started hiding my purse under the mattress, locking drawers that had never needed locks. Imagine that, locking your life away in your own house. One afternoon, I overheard him on the phone in the barn. His voice was low, but the walls were thin. "Yeah, she'll give it to me," he said. "She's desperate for company. Old ladies like that, they'll do anything if you hang around long enough. Do you know what it feels like to hear yourself reduced to a punchline? To realize you are nothing more than a wallet in someone else's eyes?" I wanted to storm out, scream at him, throw his things in the dirt. But I froze. My body remembered every year of silence, every day of loneliness. I told myself, if he leaves, who else will come? And that thought, my God, it kept me prisoner. But things came to a head in September. The corn was high and dry that season, the kind of stalks that whisper sharp secrets when the wind blows through them. He came inside one afternoon, smelling of cheap beer, and asked if I could co-sign a loan for a truck. "It's just paperwork," he said. You know I'd pay you back." I told him no. For the first time, my voice didn't shake. His smile vanished like smoke. "Don't be like that, Miss Maggie," he said, stepping closer. His eyes weren't sweet anymore, they were cold, hard, calculating. "After everything I've done for you?" Everything he'd done for me. Can you believe that? I told him to leave. But instead of walking out, he grabbed the coffee mug from the table and hurled it against the wall. The crash echoed through the kitchen, shards of porcelain scattering across the linoleum. I swear I felt the ground tilt under me. "You think you're better than me?" he snarled. "You think anyone else would even bother with you?" I'll never forget those words. They sliced deeper than any knife. Because deep down, part of me believed them. That night, I sat at the kitchen table until dawn, staring at the pieces of the mug I couldn't bring myself to sweep up. My late husband had bought it for me on our 25th anniversary. Now it lay in ruins, just like my trust, just like my pride. The next morning, Daniel came back, acting like nothing had happened. He leaned against the doorframe, grinning, and asked what was for breakfast. That was when I felt something shift inside me. Not fear this time, resolve. "Now, if you're still here with me, thank you. These memories are like ghosts, and speaking them aloud makes my chest heavy. But I need to know I'm not talking into the void. Leave me a like if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted. Drop a comment if you know what it feels like to be used. Because the story isn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't sleep for days after Daniel shattered that mug. My nerves rattled like loose window panes in a storm. I'd sit at the table, staring into the dark, replaying his words. "You think anyone else would even bother with you?" I wanted to tell someone. My daughter lived 2 towns over, but she had her own family, her own troubles. I couldn't bring myself to call. What would I even say? "Your mother was foolish enough to let a boy half your age bleed her dry?" No. Shame sat on me heavier than the loneliness ever did. The neighbors? They already whispered when they saw his truck parked outside my house. I could feel their eyes burning holes through my curtains. A widow with a young man hanging around. What else would they think? Folks love to gossip more than they love to help. So, I kept quiet. But Daniel didn't. He started bringing his friends over. At first just 1, then 2, then a whole pack of them, rowdy boys who drank on my porch and laughed like coyotes. They acted like my house was theirs, barging in and out, leaving beer cans on the steps, muddy footprints on my rug. And Daniel, he strutted through my kitchen like a king, tossing me little grins as if daring me to protest. I told myself, this can't go on. I need to end it. But ending things isn't so simple when you're 62, alone, and afraid. Fear is a chain, and he knew it. He played me like a fiddle, switching from cruelty to sweetness in the blink of an eye. One day he'd be yelling, the next he'd show up with flowers, calling me Miss Maggie in that sing-song voice. And God help me, I still wanted to believe him. But then, he took the photo. It was the only picture I had of my wedding day. Just a black and white snapshot, a little faded, but precious beyond words. My husband in his uniform, me in a simple dress, both of us young and stupid and in love. I kept it on the mantel, always. One afternoon, it was gone. When I asked him, he didn't even bother to lie. Just shrugged and said, "Maybe I pawned it. What's the big deal? He's dead, isn't he?" I swear, I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't just theft anymore, it was desecration. He hadn't only taken things, he'd reached into my chest and ripped out the last piece of the man I loved. Something inside me hardened then. A stone where my heart used to be. I stopped feeding him. Stopped laughing at his jokes. Stopped answering when he called my name. For the first time, I saw him for what he was, a parasite. And when a parasite refuses to leave, you don't beg. You cut it off. But cutting him off wasn't going to be easy. Daniel had already figured out how much power he held over me. He leaned on it like a crutch, mocking me when I tried to push back. "You wouldn't dare throw me out," he said one night, leaning close enough I could smell the beer on his breath. "You need me. Without me, you've got nothing." That was the moment I realized, if I didn't do something, he'd hollow me out completely. So, I made a plan. I waited until he and his friends came over one Saturday, rowdy and loud, blasting music from his truck. I played the part, served them sandwiches and lemonade, let them laugh at me while my hands shook behind my apron. And all the while, I was watching. Listening. Because I'd heard him brag before about things he stashed in his truck. Stolen watches, wallets, even tools from other folks in town. He thought he was untouchable. Thought nobody would believe an old woman if she spoke against him. But if the police saw it with their own eyes. That night, after they left, I crept outside with a flashlight. Opened the bed of his truck. And there it was, my husband's watch, my mother's locket, even my neighbor's missing tools. A thief's treasure chest, sitting in plain sight. My hands trembled, but I called the sheriff. Told him everything. When the deputies came the next morning, Daniel was still half drunk, swaggering in my yard. He laughed when they pulled up, thinking it was all some kind of joke. But the look on his face when they opened that truck bed, oh, I'll never forget it. His smirk slid clean off, replaced by something mean and scared. They took him away in cuffs. You'd think I'd feel relief. But when the dust settled, all I felt was hollow. Like the house itself had been stripped bare. And the town? They didn't call me brave. They called me a fool. Said I should have known better. Said I'd brought shame on myself for letting him stay so long. No one wanted to talk about what Daniel had done, only what I had let happen. That hurt worse than all the rest. But I wasn't finished with Daniel. Not yet. Because jail wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. And what came after? Well, that's the part that even now, at 78, keeps me awake at night. If you're still here, listening, thank you. Please, leave me a like, maybe share this video, so more people can hear what happens when you let loneliness blind you. I thought I was done with Daniel after the sheriff's car pulled out of my driveway, his wrists cuffed, his swagger finally broken. But life doesn't tie things up with pretty bows, no matter how much you wish it would. A few months passed, and the whispers around town grew louder. Folks at the church pews turned their heads when I walked in. At the diner, conversations hushed the moment I stepped through the door. To them, I wasn't a victim, I was the fool who had let a boy ruin her. And Daniel? He didn't stay behind bars long. A few charges stuck, but others slipped through. He was young, white, and smooth-talking. Judges and juries look at boys like that and see potential, not damage. By spring, he was back on the streets. The first time I saw him again, I nearly dropped my groceries. He was leaning against a gas pump, lighting a cigarette, looking at me with those same smirking eyes. Only now, there was something darker behind them, something that told me he still believed he owned me. "You miss me, Miss Maggie?" he called out across the lot, loud enough for everyone to hear. His buddies laughed. My cheeks burned hot, and I drove away as fast as I could. That night, the fear came back. Every creak of the house felt like him slipping through the door. I sat with a kitchen knife on my lap, ashamed, because I'd survived wars, deaths, and decades of hard living, yet here I was, terrified of a boy half my age. But fear only lasts so long before it turns into something else. Anger. I started keeping a journal, writing down every memory, every theft, every cruel word, every bruise to my pride. At first, it was just to keep my sanity. But then I realized it was evidence. If he came back, if he tried anything, I'd have more than just my trembling voice. Sure enough, one April evening, he showed up at my porch. No truck this time, no friends. Just him, swaying slightly from drink, eyes glinting in the porch light. "You think you beat me, huh?" he slurred. "You think you ruined me? You ain't nothing without me. Just an old crow waiting to die." I gripped the doorknob tight, heart pounding like a drum. For a moment, the old fear came flooding back. But then, I remembered the broken mug, the missing locket, the photo of my wedding day, gone forever. And I felt that stone inside me again, hard and unmovable. I opened the door just enough for him to see my face. "No, Daniel," I said, steady as I'd ever spoken in my life. "You ruined yourself. And if you step one foot inside this house again, I'll make sure the whole world knows it." He laughed, but it was hollow now. Something in my voice must have reached him, because after a long, tense silence, he turned and stumbled down the steps. That was the last time I saw him up close. But what I did next, that's what shocked the town more than anything. I took my journal, every page of it, and I mailed it to the local paper. Names, dates, details. I told the truth, raw and unvarnished. They ran the story under the headline, "Widow Speaks Out Against Small-Town Conman." And let me tell you, the town didn't like having its secrets aired. Some folks supported me. Others called me vindictive. A few said I was senile, making it all up. But once the words were printed, they couldn't be unsaid. Daniel's reputation was burned to ash. No one would hire him, no one would trust him. He left Delaware not long after. Maybe that was my revenge. Maybe that was my justice. But it came with a cost. For a while, I was more isolated than ever. Friends I'd known for decades stopped calling. My daughter said I should have let it go, that stirring it up only made me look pitiful. And yet, I don't regret it. Because here's what I learned: silence is the thief's best weapon. Shame is their shield. And the moment you speak, really speak, you take back your power. I wish I could tell you I lived happily ever after. But life doesn't work that way. I still sit alone at my kitchen table most nights. I still miss my husband, my mother, that photo I'll never hold again. But I'm not afraid anymore. If you've stayed with me through all 4 parts of this story, bless you. Truly. It means more than you'll ever know. I told this not just for myself, but for anyone out there who's ever been used, betrayed, or laughed at for trusting the wrong person. Don't let them make you feel small. Don't let them steal your dignity along with your keepsakes. Speak up. Shout, if you have to. And if no one listens, write it down, so someday, someone will. If this story touched you, please give it a like, share it with someone who might need it, and leave me a comment. Tell me I'm not alone. Because at 78, I've learned the most important truth of all: loneliness may be heavy, but silence, that will crush you.